This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. And we know you're watching. John Bailey with Jim Benerofe, the Dean of the School of White Plains Journalism, and Peter Katz, the anchor for all seasons. And right now, we have to go to the story that is universally local in America, and that was the front page of today's New York Times. And it's just an amazing thing. Gentlemen,
pretty much occupied the
yes.
entire above the fold section of the Times.
Yes.
And our above the fold section should be occupied with the headlines.
That's true.
And here are the headlines, stories for the week of September 28th, 2018. Senate Judiciary Committee vote on Judge Brett Kavanaugh, most serious decision since March 6th, 1857, when the Dred Scott decision set the stage for the Civil War. State Education Department releases 2018 test assessments. White Plains improves scores, but data is meaningless, according to State Education Commissioner. Achievement gap between blacks and Latinos and whites is widest it has ever been in 10 years, after efforts appeared to be closing the gap. Gedney Association files notice of appeal to overturn Lefkowitz's decision allowing French American School of New York to build a campus on former Ridgeway Country Club. Westchester County economy is having a great year, already clearing out half the 2018 revenue deficit. Just when you thought White Plains was catching up, they had an awful August when it was with sales tax receipts down $800,000. White Plains Week asks what happened to the Welcome to White Plains mural. Rumor has it, it will be coming back someplace. White Plains Television Studios, from where you are seeing this program the last 18 years, has received funding to move studios to the library. SEIU 32BJ set to strike 500 residential buildings in Hudson Valley Monday if no movement in talks. And at Westchester Broadway Theater, the original Phantom returns with a tall, dark, handsome young Phantom and a Christine to die for.
Thank you, Jim. And those are the headlines, but here is the headline that affects everybody, and that is that New York Times front page this morning. And you gentlemen watched the hearings, and what did you think?
Of the hearings?
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you. Anyone who watched that cannot possibly feel that Brett Kavanaugh is qualified to sit on the United States Supreme Court, in my opinion. Mrs. Ford was convincing, she was honest, she was intelligent, she had been through an incredible trauma. Kavanaugh, on the other hand, lied. He told lies, instantly provable lies. He was belligerent. He expressed the kind of emotion and lack of self-control which is not befitting any federal judge or any judge at any level, actually. Now, do you want the whole story? The whole story begins actually last night after the hearing. We're recording this program Friday morning, but last night the American Bar Association, which had found Kavanaugh to be qualified, called upon the Senate Judiciary Committee to postpone its vote on Kavanaugh, on making a recommendation to the full Senate on Kavanaugh's nomination, and have the FBI reopen its investigation of his background. Pretty dramatic thing. As we're recording this program, the Senate Judiciary Committee is meeting on the nomination of Kavanaugh. They expect to take a vote at 1:30 this afternoon, and that vote would be to send this nomination to the Senate with either a recommendation to advise and consent and approve the nomination in the full Senate, or to reject the nomination, or they could always take no position on the nomination. Now, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell promised a fast vote to confirm Kavanaugh to the court. He said a few days ago, now this is before the hearing, right, before anyone heard anything, McConnell said that Kavanaugh would be on the court before the end of next week. Talk about making up your minds without having the facts. And that was before the major hearing at which the allegations were explored that Kavanaugh assaulted women and had drinking problems. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford testified before the committee in a session that was covered live by all of the networks. It was gripping, convincing testimony. She stated she was 100% positive that it was Kavanaugh who attempted to rape her, and when she screamed for help, put his hand over her mouth in such a way that she believed he was going to kill her. The Republicans on the committee, all men, brought in a female prosecutor from Maricopa County in Arizona, where notorious Sheriff Joe Arpaio once ruled. Arpaio was convicted of a federal crime and was pardoned by President Trump. The female prosecutor they brought in did the questioning of Ford, so the Republican men on the committee could avoid the spectacle of them grilling a smart, educated, nervous witness trying to tell her story of being the victim of a sex crime at the hands of a man they want to put on the Supreme Court. Ford was entirely believable as a witness. When Kavanaugh testified under oath, he was belligerent. He interrupted and yelled at senators questioning him, and he used the same catchphrases over and over again, which indicated he was well rehearsed. His angry man persona seemed to be right out of the Bill Shine playbook. Now, who's Bill Shine? Shine is a man who was fired from Fox News in the sexual harassment scandals which gripped the right-wing news operation, and he now works at the Trump White House and was involved in the intensive White House sessions which took place to prepare Kavanaugh for his testimony. It was Shine who helped orchestrate the defenses used by his boss at Fox, Roger Ailes, when Ailes was revealed to be a sexual predator, and he was tossed out by the owners of Fox.
Guy Shine.
When pressed, Kavanaugh still refused to ask for an FBI investigation during the hearing. He was asked numerous times, would you support an FBI investigation to reopen this, to get to the facts? Kavanaugh refused to say, yes, the FBI should now look at these allegations. Why would you say that? Maybe you have something to hide?
Maybe he doesn't want it done.
The hearing contained spectacles such as Republican Lindsey Graham yelling and pointing fingers at Democrats on the committee for creating sham allegations against Kavanaugh, he said, although there's nothing to indicate that Dr. Ford was any part of any Democratic plot. Commentators suggested after Ford's testimony that Kavanaugh was finished as a nominee, That's how powerful and convincing Ford was. At one point, while Ford was speaking, it looked as if Republican Orrin Hatch, one of Kavanaugh's biggest backers, had fallen asleep. You can look at the pictures.
Well, Orrin is a little old.
He's sitting next to Chairman Grassley on the committee, and it looks as if he's sound asleep. After Kavanaugh did his bullying, some commentators expressed the opinion that he was back in the game, in the running for the Supreme Court seat. Now, did Trump watch the Kavanaugh hearing? He sure did. Fox News was playing on Air Force One as they flew from New York back to Washington, and then Trump closeted himself in the White House living quarters to watch the rest of the hearing. And by watching Fox, he would have heard Chris Wallace of Fox News characterize the Ford testimony as a disaster for the Republicans. Sentiment echoed by others on Fox News, including their personal legal guru, Judge Napolitano. You remember Judge Napolitano, John?
It's hard to keep track of this.
Did Melania Trump watch? No, her spokesman said. She was too busy having meetings. What kind of meetings? No answer. World leaders at the United Nations General Assembly laughed a couple of times at President Trump during Trump's speech to the General Assembly this week. Now, that line that drew the loudest laughter was when Trump said, quote, "In less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than any administration in the history of our country." Trump later said he intended to.
George Washington's.
Trump later said that he intended to make the UN delegates laugh. And he said he got bigger laughs than President Obama got when Obama addressed the UN. Except no one laughed at Obama when Obama addressed the UN. Trump's Environmental Protection Agency is getting ready to eliminate the Office of Science Advisor. This would be in line with Trump's efforts to prevent the government from relying on scientific evidence when it makes decisions.
Why would you want to do that?
Trump wants to scuttle NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. The White House has drafted a separate trade deal with Mexico. Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, said he's confident Congress will pass the Mexico-only deal, but it turns out, according to congressional sources, that they don't have the votes to pass a Mexico-only trade deal. And anyway,
they can't count.
The trade deal, as they have drafted it at the White House, would not make Mexico pay for the wall.
Well, thank you for that sordid wrap-up of another week in the Trump administration. But I want to reference that Dred Scott decision in 1857. It's important to note what that did. The Dred Scott was a slave whose owner, an army doctor, had spent time in Illinois, a free state, and Wisconsin, a free territory at the time of Scott's residence. The Supreme Court had 5 of the 9 justices from the South, while another, Robert Greer, was staunchly pro-slavery. Chief Justice Roger B. Taney wrote the majority decision, which was issued on March 6, 1857. The court held that Scott was not free based on his residence in either Illinois or Wisconsin because he was not considered a person under the U.S. Constitution, in the opinion of the justices. Black people were not considered citizens when the Constitution was drafted in 1787. According to Taney, Dred Scott was the property of his owner, and property could not be taken from a person without due process of law, and that decision led to, I believe, the bloodiest war in American history, the Civil War. And it's just important to note that when you go based on turn right and questions right and wrong into politics, terrible things happen. But now let's go to the local news, such as it is. That you see this entrance to White Plains, that is a painted over trestle of Metro North, part of the redo of the station, but there was something missing. There was a mural, and we'll talk about that just a little bit later. And next in line, we got some test results from Albany finally. And here is Ms. Mary Ellen Elia, the Commissioner of Education, to tell you about it.
Hello, my name is Mary Ellen Elia, and I'm Commissioner of New York's Education Department. Today we announced the state assessment results in grades 3 through 8 in English, Language Arts, and Math. our teachers, parents, and students should be proud of the hard work being done in classrooms around the state every day. Overall, in English language arts, the percentage of students in grades 3 through 8 who scored at the proficient level is 45.2%. In math, the percentage of students who scored at the proficient level this year is 44.5%. In New York City, students scored better than the students statewide in English language arts with 46.7% proficient. And when you look at the big 5 schools together, New York City continues to have the highest percentage of students proficient in English language arts and math, with Yonkers remaining the second highest. Usually we talk about how much scores have changed, but this year is different because of the switch from 3-day assessments to 2. This decreases fatigue for students and enables them to better demonstrate what they know and are able to do. But it also means that the 2018 results can't be compared with prior year results. Anytime you make a major change to test design, you have to conduct a new standards review to ensure the validity of the assessment. During the review, New York State educators determine new performance standards, establishing a new baseline for what knowledge and skills are needed at each performance level. This does not mean this year's scores aren't meaningful. They are. They help us determine whether we are actually achieving equity for all students and reducing achievement gaps. And the assessments help establish a foundation to determine which grades, schools, and groups of students need additional support.
And let's take a look at the White Plains results now. In the White Plains EL8, the results in passing, 45%. That is the orange White Plains score on the far right. And the numbers receiving and the percentage in grade levels 3 and 4 are 30% and 15% heading up to the 45. Next, how many failed? 55% failed. 31% is the White Plains score there.
You know, if I were running a business and 55% of the products I made didn't work, I'd be out of business.
Well, there's more. Next, let's take a look at the ethnic gap here. The whites, about 70% passed, okay? The blacks only, I think that says 34% passed, and the Latinos only 34% passed. And that was slightly better than the 2017 scores. However, folks, you cannot say that the present new tests are not relative and then relate it in the results that you show on your website as being better than the previous year. This is just irrational the way they're presented. Now, let's take a look.
So what they're saying then is that this year there's less failure.
Less failure. Yeah, that's exactly what they're saying. Well put. And now let's take a look at the math. 41% passed the math. That's worse. And then let's take a look at the failures. The math failing. 59% failed in White Plains on the math, on the new tests. Let's take a look at the ethnic breakdown. This is also not too good. 68% of the white students passed, and only 30% of the black population passed. Latinos, 31%. Not much improvement there. I mean, actually statistically insignificant, but you've got to throw out last year's scores according to the Mary Ellen Elia. And moving along, I have to say that there is no indication of how they determined what the passing level was, what the raw score against the curve thing. But this is really, they shine the apple for this one, but truly, I mean, this is not good. And if you can improve 5% each year due to their statistical manipulation, lo and behold, Governor Cuomo will have a great campaign slogan for 2020, the education governor who turned education around in New York State. What do you think? Moving along. Gedney has appealed. This was filed on Wednesday.
This is the French-American school decision.
And this is going to go to the appellate court for
Now,
review.
the judge said, basically threw out the complaints against the project proceeding and said the project can proceed.
Right.
And so now the
Now
Gedney
it can't
Association
proceed.
has appealed the decision, and if the appellate division takes it under its wing, it can be a year or so of
Yes,
these-
exactly.
That
to
will
consider.
boost the time that they've been trying to do this to 8 years, 9 years.
Something
9
like that.
years,
yeah.
maybe. And it goes on and on, my friends. But truly, were you expecting the appeal?
I was still surprised.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know where they're getting all the money to do it. But
I don't know. Does anyone see an irony in the whole situation that they're trying to build a school which has had great success in educating the children, and
we don't want them.
and you don't want a successful school
Oh,
in
that's
White Plains?
Oh, that's brilliant.
I mean,
Yes.
especially look at you just spent how
A
long did you
public-private
just spend
partnership.
going through the failure figures
Yes.
for the public schools?
I mean, no, but that ethnic gap is more than it was 10 years ago when they said they had closed it to 9% in White Plains on previous tests, which are thrown out as too easy.
Can't make
Now
it up.
we're back
Where's-
to easy tests.
Maybe Betsy DeVos can come up with a solution for this. What do
Betsy
you think?
DeVos, the
Well, I-
savior of
I don't know,
education
yeah,
in
you know.
America as we know her.
how long are they going to wait?
Yeah, there had been a report, I don't know, some weeks ago, months ago, that Trump refers to her as Ditzy DeVos.
Oh, yes. Well, speaking of ditziness, the numbers are
She's the
amazing.
Education Secretary, the U.S. Secretary of Education, in case you didn't know. Go ahead.
That's right. Well, we have another one to go down there, and that is ours in New York State. But here's the question I have. We have two cities, a tale of two cities, and look at how good Westchester County is doing. They are 5.6% ahead of last year's sales tax receipts. They have an $19 million surplus, which almost wipes out half of the $37 million deficit we heard about last spring from the county. And they're on track for a total of $555 million total, an all-time record in sales tax this year. The deficit auditors cited this spring would be covered if the growth rate exceeds 5.6% in the next 4 months, September, October, November, and December. But unfortunately, this was not shared by White Plains in August. Next slide. It was the worst of times for White Plains. White Plains suffered an $812,859 decline in August sales tax dollars. Now, no one will tell you why, because nobody returns my calls to City Hall. So
Could it have something to do with Walmart closing?
It might be, Peter, you think? That's a lot of jing to go out of the sales tax.
Don't know, but
Yeah, but and then after a 7% increase in July, the city collected $537,000 less than the first 2 months of last year's fiscal year. Let's hope this does not continue and it's just aberrational and we'll have just a ton of money rolling in September.
yeah, speaking of Walmart closing, someone told me that the restaurant Pizzeria Uno has closed. Is that true?
Yes,
Yeah.
shut.
It is true.
It is true. And speaking
Here in
of
White Plains.
something
They
else
have,
went missing.
they're elsewhere. I mean, it's a national chain. But
Something else is missing, and this is a shot of the entrance to White Plains on Main Street that we showed you earlier.
Under the Cy Schulman administration, didn't they put up a great big welcome to White Plains,
Yes,
a bit
it
of
was up
artwork there?
just a few months ago.
Yeah.
But it's been there for, what, 20 years, 15, 20 years?
So Metro North, in doing their work rehabbing the train station, they repainted the bridge,
Right.
that trestle. So did they paint over
Well,
the
I
Welcome
called
to
City
White
Hall.
Plains
I
thing,
said,
or
where
what?
is it? Is it coming back or what? And the person I spoke to, the mayor's office, said she thought it was paneled and it was not painted over and the panels will be put someplace else. But she was going to get back to me. But of course, as so curiously happens, nobody did. So we await that call because I like that mural. Mural? The mural.
Well, I don't know if it's in panels. You could call it a mural.
Sorry,
I suppose.
folks.
If not, then it's just the way the trestle was painted. If it is a
Wait a
mural,
minute.
we have to look very carefully and see if it's for sale on eBay.
It was pretty warm.
That's to make up the sales tax.
Right. Okay, now next I'd like to, I think I have another slide. There, yes, it is. And that will be, according to what I understand, is the new headquarters of White Plains Television Cable
That's at the
Studios.
library. Now remember
That's-
this,
Yeah.
the cable operation started at the library decades ago.
And John
Right.
Tadier stopped it.
And
He was a television executive.
yeah. Okay, so it started over there. So really, you're turning back the clock about what 30 years to go back to the library.
Well, there are a lot of people trying to turn back the clock around the country today, Peter. It's a trend. It's a trend. It's trending. But be that as it may, we don't know when the move will be accomplished, but it was, I believe, funded last night at a Common Council meeting, which I could not attend because of other commitments. So we await that situation to develop, and we look forward. I believe it'll all be self-contained, and
I don't
who
know.
knows?
I
We have no idea about this, and but
You know,
it would be nice if producers were consulted as what possibly the station needed. You know, how about a mobile production van? That would
too
be
logical.
nice. That would be nice. Why?
Too logical. You know, that,
Yes.
you know, to do that would be the equivalent of listening to the American Bar Association about Supreme Court justices.
Yeah, you know, you're right. That's an interesting
Yeah.
parallel by there. Now, I want to take a mention about a show that Peter and I saw last week, and that was Phantom. Let's see.
This was a version of Phantom of the Opera, which was supposed to go to Broadway until another version of Phantom of the Opera
by
came
Lloyd
along.
Webber,
Yeah.
Sir Lloyd Webber.
So
wiped
that's
out
the one that went to Broadway and has
Yeah,
been
he
running for
Weber got
years.
financing first,
Yeah.
and so they withdrew it. But it was a huge hit in Houston. It was a huge hit in Seattle, and it ran for 9 months.
So this is over at the Westchester Broadway Theater in
and it's
Elmsford.
back.
This is the third time that they have put on this show. Sells very well. People seem to love it.
Well, that's because it's a romantic Phantom. The Phantom is young, handsome, and romantic. Great baritone voice. And Christine is terrific. You can read the review on my site. And I must say,
WPCNR.com.
Yes.
WPCNR.com.
Yes, I endorse this musical. Go see it. It's terrific. And we'll hope you'll see us next week. John Bailey, Jim Benerofe, Peter Katz. Good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.